Hi and welcome to the Geek Legion of Doom. This is a Marvel Legends review and we'll be having a look at the Giant Man series. Now, the Giant Man series was actually in the UK an exclusive series to the retailer Woolworths. It wasn't available anywhere else, and Woolworths went bust not all that long after these came out. So these in England actually are quite a hard series to get. And we'll start off with the character Sentry. Sentry was a relatively modern character that was kind of introduced into the, sort of the comic continuity, and his original look was this one here, where he had kind of like a beard and he was a bit sort of dishevelled, and then in later incarnations he sort of cleaned himself up. Now I believe there's actually another variant of this, which is basically he's got a kind of more orangey costume, not a sort of an official variant as such, but one of these sort of ones where they sort of slightly change the paint job, and his kind of costume's a little bit more orange rather than red. Rather than yellow. So, what are you thinking of the Sentry figure?
Yeah, I quite like him. I quite like the idea around Sentry. He's basically Superman for the Marvel universe, isn't
the difference being he has severe mental issues.
Yeah.
But yeah, I quite liked him. He was a relatively short-lived character.
Well, it goes to show, isn't it? It's like that kind of Superman figure doesn't really give many people that much interest, do they? I mean, people get behind Superman because obviously he's got a legacy, but to bring in a new kind of character like that, it isn't the easiest sell for most people, is it? Not very relatable, and then they give him severe mental issues to try and give the character some depth, which is completely unrelatable for most people as well. So cool.
Ironically, in the actual, I guess he had mostly like long hair in the comics. He didn't really have short hair for all that period of time, but they haven't got a figure with him with long hair and without the beard. It's kind of one or the other.
Yeah.
So, but in the actual comics, he mainly had he looked like Fabio. There was a joke in one of the Spider-Man comics that he looked like Fabio.
Yeah.
And
who's Fabio?
The male model.
How do you know about this Fabio person?
Would you like to know? Yeah, but anyway, so there you go, that's Sentry. Moving on.
Cool.
Obviously now this series you get the Giant Man figure, which I think is a pretty decent figure.
Yeah,
now once again, we are missing a couple of figures, which we'll get on to in just a second.
Take that one out.
So first we'll have a look at Havoc, and it's kind of, I guess, original appearance type.
Which is basically a rip-off of the mould, I think, from Bullseye, with his crazy hat.
Obviously, brother of Scott Summers from the X-Men. Obviously, he was in the First Class film, but not looking like this. I mean, to be fair, the actual design of the actual character isn't particularly interesting for his costume, so, the figure's okay, but the actual character itself I don't think is a particularly interesting character.
Right. Which brings me to the to this, which I quite like. Age of Apocalypse stuff.
So, yet another Wolverine character. This time we've got a messed up Wolverine.
If you ever wondered how far his claws go up, they're not just in his hands.
There you go. So, although obviously this was from a different sort of timeline.
Yeah, the Age of Apocalypse stuff. Long time since I read it, but or anything about it. I can't really remember it all, but it's kind of cool. It's like feral mutants and characters who were.
Actually, I think you're missing 3 figures. So I think you're missing the Age of Apocalypse Sabretooth, Thor, and Warbird, or Captain Miss Marvel. And there's also this version of Wolverine is actually the variant version, because there is him with his kind of standard normal head as well.
Yeah, Warbird's cool. But, I quite like that figure. I should have got that. That's plenty of time to collect.
And obviously, ironically, you've got the Giant Man series, and you get Ant-Man in his kind of in the same series. I quite like this figure. I think I quite like the mould of Hank Pym's face. I think it's pretty decent.
Helmet looks cool.
Yeah.
Did it come with any insects and any ants in there?
And if you
No,
put some
yeah.
sugar all over it, and yeah, quite a do. Like I said, I quite like the helmet and stuff. I think it looks pretty decent figure. Surprised it didn't come out. You know, we didn't get an Ant-Man sooner, to be honest.
Mm. Right. Okay.
Of course, well, we are from Britain, and you know, of course, we are Captain Britain fans. Or certainly, I am. Now, Captain Britain has had a few different costumes throughout his time, and this is my sort of favourite of his costumes, or variant of it at least. And the original sort of Captain Britain had a very kind of different costume, where his hair was out and stuff like that. Now, if you have a look on the actual packages here, again, there's a different paint job, which was again another variant of the Captain Britain sort of suits, but I don't think it ever went into production. So what we've got is this version here. But I quite like it. I think it's a decent figure. And quite frankly, we need more Captain Britain stuff. Although I'm never a big fan of his. A lot of his. I think some of his stories were a little bit weird sometimes. You know, kind of Alan Moore stuff. I wasn't so keen on it. It was just a bit weird. But I do like Captain Britain.
The alcoholic with superpowers, is it? So
yeah.
I mean, that sounds about right for somebody from
Britain. Yeah.
from Britain. Yeah, sounds like me minus the superpowers. Captain drinking.
So Kitty Pryde with the head of Ant-Man, and again the kind of work on the actual Ant-Man is really good, because obviously it's a bigger scale, so it can kind of go into a bit more detail, I suppose. But I actually think this is maybe the best female figure, I would personally say. I mean, Kitty Pryde, I mean, her costume isn't particularly anything too outlandish, but I think it's a decent figure, to be honest. And you've got Lockheed as well in there. What do you think of it?
Yeah, it's good. It's good. Like I say, I really like the Giant Man. Almost like a bust, isn't it? Just that top section. I mean, it's of that sort of quality. I mean, you know, if you were to buy these, you know, as these sort of giant figures as a separate, I'm sure they would charge you a hell of a lot of money for them. But to get it as part of a package is quite a bargain. Kitty Pryde, I find her a little bit boring, to be honest with you.
I like Kitty Pryde.
She's alright.
Yeah. So, that is all of the Giant Men series that we've got there. What's your favourite figure that we either showed you or have not showed you? Leave us a comment, and we will look forward to seeing you next time.